Well, hello to all of our ring partners out there. Byron, Belka here, and we have the good fortune of having one of our diamond elites that's going to join us today, Mario Greefhorst. And so, Mario, thank you so much for tuning in and taking some time out of your busy schedule. I know to be on with us tonight. So,
It's my pleasure.
well, and you know what? One of the things that I love about Mario is, when we talk about, personal development, when we talk about continually trying to get better, this is something that Mario has been a part of for quite a few years, training, teaching, helping. And I think even in the early stages of even Anthony Robbins, as he was known back then, now we call him Tony.
Yeah.
You did work with him as well in Europe and different things. So, how long have you been doing that? And how long have you experienced that?
With Anthony, you mean?
Oh, just in general.
In general, I remember I got this book. I may have. Well, it doesn't matter. It was called The Power Within Yourself, and it was the first book I got on personal development. It was totally new to me because I thought, yeah, life is something that happens to you, and you have to go with the flow and so on. Then, at the first time, I thought you can also make your own decisions, and set the sails in the direction that you want to go. So that was, I think I was like 18 years old at the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
awesome. Well, it really is so important. So many times we think that, like you said, that it's stuff that just happens to us, or it's circumstantial, or it's the way that we're raised, or it's our culture, and we can't do anything about it. But we know that, and reading this book that, I kind of announced that I was reading, and I've asked people to, if they want to join me and us read that this month, talking about the 7 habits of highly effective people. I know this is also a book that you and Miriam did kind of a training on yourselves at one of our large events. So I know that this is something that you're very familiar with.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why we chose it, because I believe in those fundamental principles. They never change. And when that's your basis, then you cannot go wrong, if you know what I mean, because the principles are solid. They're always there.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about them. It's not, what is important is not based on how you feel at the moment. No, it's about what you believe in, your core values. That's what he preaches. And that gives you a very solid foundation to grow from. And that's really appealing to me. So we did this in Berlin, I guess, and it was 7 Habits of Highly Effective Network Marketing Professionals.
I love it. I love it. Well, I mean, once again, because the principles are universal, and that's what I love about personal development. As we develop ourselves and as we become better, and our capacity to be able to do more, have different skill sets, have different perspectives, have more control over really what happens to us. I mean, it doesn't just affect you in one aspect of your life. It affects you in all aspects of life. And I think that's why this is such a powerful book, because these principles really are things that can help, whether you're networkers, whether you're just normal business people, whether you're in family, I mean, all aspects. And so, as we're starting this, and for those of you, if you've started reading along with us, I wanted to kind of talk about chapters 1 and 2, or at least the habits 1 and 2. Now, there we go.
The Dutch version.
There we go. And I love that it is in so many languages around the globe. And if you haven't joined us, I mean, there's stuff that you can learn as we're going to talk about it today. But catch up if you want to. This is something, if there were some insights that you had that we didn't even talk about, because there's so many different directions in just a few minutes that we're going to have today to share this. That put them in the comments on Facebook, on our Rain Partner page, where we're streaming this as well. Share your insights with others, that what you got out of some of these different principles. But one of the first habits, one of the first things that I love that he talks about is having that personal vision. He starts with that personal vision, and he talks about being proactive. Yes. And it all kind of has to start there. I mean, as we try to build upon different things, I mean, if you don't have that vision, if you don't have that belief, and kind of, the second one is begin with the end in mind, which means you know where you're going, then it really is hard to do any of these other things. And so being proactive is the key. And, Mara, I know you're in situations, a lot of times you've trained companies and people and groups and even teams within your own network. And I mean, what do you see? How important is it to have this, personal vision?
Right. At first, I always thought when you talk about proactivity, it's about taking initiative, but it's so much more. It's so much more than that. It's basically it's a big deal because it's basically taking responsibility for everything what happens in your life, personally and business life. And that's a huge thing to say, obviously, because yeah, sometimes things happen, but they happen to everybody. It's how not what happens, but how you deal with what happens, and take responsibility. Make yourself accountable. That's what proactivity means to me. That you don't point fingers to circumstances or to people if things don't go the right way, but that you start with yourself. What did I do? What was my influence? Did I have influence? And am I able to respond the correct way? Because that's in the word, that responsible is able to choose the right response in the situation. And we all have that influence. We all have this power to choose. There's always a gap between something that happens and then the action that follows it. And in between, you can make a choice, and you can think about that and make yourself responsible for the choice that you make. That's what he's basically saying in the first habit.
No, and I love that because as he quotes Viktor Frankl, who was in one of the concentration camps, and he came into that scenario being kind of a psychiatrist, thinking that things happen to you and because of your environment or because you were raised or your background, that kind of set up basically how you are as a person. But I love what you're saying where he talks about the difference between that gap between a stimulus and a response is where all the growth happens, is where things can happen, where we have control, where it's like unlike any other creature on this planet. That's the one thing we as human beings have.
We're the only ones.
That we can have that self-awareness, and when we have that stimulus and then the response, we have freedom in there.
Yes.
To be able to change, to be able to contemplate and really dictate how we're going to react. And that is critical, rather than just be acted upon, because like an animal is trained to do something, but the animal can't be in charge of the training to change its own habits.
Right. You can judge. He just does. It's instant. Yeah. He also talks, obviously, in the first habit about you talk about the circle of influence also, but in a different way also, because people know people. That's a circle of influence. But also in Covey's material, there's a circle of concern and a circle of influence. It's very interesting to study that to everybody who's listening, because you don't want to be in the outer circle, because then you victimize yourself. You're being at the mercy of everything that happens to you. And proactive people, they don't waste time in the outer circle. They are in the inner circle, and they only spend time and energy on things they can influence themselves. Because why should you worry or spend time on something that's out of your control? You have to make this distinction. Okay, this is what happens to me. Can I change it? No, have no influence it. Let it go. Smile about it. Let it go. And focus on what you can influence, on what you can do. I think that's a very powerful and simple to understand principle. Not so easy to do always.
But no, and I love how he puts it, like you say, where the inner circle are those things that you can have an effect on, that you can have a control on. And so because you can, if you focus there, then you can be proactive, because you can make a difference. When you focus on that outer circle of things that you don't have control over, things that you can't really control except for frustration, then exactly what you're saying, you can become victimized because things are happening to you because you don't have control, rather than focusing on the things that you can have control over. And I love, like I said, like you mentioned, where there's these multiple circles, and we just need to be aware, which is one of the things that he's talking about, that we're different than any other creature on the planet, that we can be self-aware. That's one of the main things that we can do. We can be self-aware. He talks about 4 things. I kind of wrote them down that I liked. That he said that we can be self-aware. We have an imagination. We have a conscience, because in between that stimulus and response, we can choose morally how we feel about what our next response or action is going to be.
Yes. And
we have a choice. So those are the 4 things that, like you said, it's not just being proactive, Like you said, it's not just, hey, I'm moving, and so I'm being proactive. But no, it's being self-aware. It's having that imagination and being able to visualize something. It's being able to have those moral principles and that conscious of who you are, who you want to become, and how you want to change. And then we have that ability, because we have, that independent will, that freedom to choose, then to change our response and know that we have that responsibility for change. And I think that really is so important, because unless we understand that and are self-aware of that, as long as we're pointing fingers and it's everything around us's fault, then our environments will always have control over us. Our circumstances will always have control over us, rather than we taking control of our lives. So as entrepreneurs, as we're trying to all personally develop, if we don't understand that we need to grow, if we don't understand that we do need to change, it's really, really hard to go out there and see the success that I know that we're all after. And once again, I love the fact that you've been able to witness this firsthand as you've trained so many people over the years. I mean, have you gone into organizations and come back later? Have you seen a change when people start to implement these principles?
Sometimes immediately, when we talk about the circle of concern and influence, sometimes the people, they victimize themselves and they don't even realize it. And when you talk about these principles and give them examples and asking questions, at one time, one guy, I think he was like 60 years old, left the room, and I followed him and he was crying, tears. He said, I don't know what just happened, but I got this insight. What am I doing to myself? That's basically what he did. He was doing it to himself. And you can, when you listen very carefully to people or to yourself, in which circle you are. I love it when people say, yeah, well, that's just who I am.
Yeah.
Also a choice. You can change that if you want.
Yeah, exactly. That's your choice to remain that way. That's your choice to be that.
Yeah, I'm a night person. No, you're not. You chose to be one, but you can be a morning person as well if you make that decision.
Yeah, you get up early enough times and you'll fall asleep earlier because you're exhausted, right? So
talk about this stuff, people usually get a clap in the face first, and then it's like they wake up sometimes from, wow, this is not rocket science, it's not that complicated, but it's so powerful that you realize that you have that control over a big part of your life. Not everything, but whatever happens, you always control how you respond. Mm-hmm. That's 100% within your control. Mm-hmm. And I love helping people to simply realize that. And then you can go work with the 7 other habits. But this is crucial. This is basic. You have to have this. Yeah. Otherwise, the other 6 habits don't work.
Yeah, exactly. It's so foundational, because once again, if you're not self-aware, then you're not going to be able to realize how you can become better by implementing and creating these other habits. And I love that we talk about habits here, because it really who we are. It's not really even our feelings. It's not really, but it's who we habitually become through our habits. That's who we are.
That's good you mentioned that, because at first it's discipline, but when you do it longer, it becomes a habit, and you don't even have to think about it anymore. Mm-hmm. That's powerful. But people always think, oh, I have to constantly think about this and remind me of it, and that's so hard work. No, you don't have to. You do it for a while, you remind yourself, and then it becomes a habit, and you do it automatically. That's the beauty of it. It becomes an automated mindset. It becomes a way of life. Mm-hmm. And that's so helpful and powerful, also in difficult situations, of course.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. It really is. I mean, I think at different times of my life where, when I was in school and, I did have to get up super early, and then different times in my life now where I stay up late because we have a global business, and, there's different parts of the world that I can get in touch with at different, after midnight. And so, and I still get up because we have the kids, but I don't get up as early as I used to. But in the past, you'd wake up a lot of times before your alarm. I'd wake up before my alarm because your body just knows, it becomes that habit. And, as you talked about kind of being a morning person or a night person, that's one of the things that came into my mind as well. So no, I love that. And I love it when, as you're talking about, when there's real life experiences that people can think of and say, you know what? I don't have to react that way. I don't have to do that to myself, or I don't need to be I don't need to just put up with the fact that everybody in my history, if somebody's saying this, has a temper, or everybody this is just what we do, or that we can change those things if we're aware.
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. And
Well,
then something opens up, and it's a great feeling. Also, it gives you also the belief that you are in control more than you think you are in control of. It's a
yeah.
good feeling to have.
Well, and I think that that's an amazing point too. And I have read that, The Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, that is kind of addressed in this first, uh, that Stephen R. Covey talks about a little bit, where even though he was in those concentration camps, even though they had more liberty, the guards had more liberty, they could do more things. He says that he had more freedom.
Yes.
Because they couldn't get here. Yeah, he was in control of his responses, and I mean, and just him internalizing, envisioning, what he would be teaching students in his classes about what he learned in his experience, through his experiences in the concentration camp, when he was in the concentration camp.
Right.
He would visualize what he would be what lessons he could learn and teach the world through what he was experiencing. And those are some different things that just once again helped him get through, I think he had his wife die, his children die, his parents die. He made it, and his sister made it through, but that's one of the things that strikes me, that they had more liberty. The guards even had more liberty, but he had more freedom.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, and that's crazy. I mean, I couldn't even imagine being in circumstances like that. Couldn't even imagine them. But if you could create freedom in that kind of setting, and you could still be free, what can't we do if we just take those limiting beliefs off of us, and or have that self-awareness, so that we have that personal vision and can turn it in to personal leadership.
Yes, I totally agree. And he in the end, he said he was basically grateful for what he experienced over there. How crazy is that?
Yeah.
It wasn't he was treated like an animal, basically, and worse.
Yeah.
But still have the power to say, okay, I'm grateful for what they did to me. I can use that to help other people, to give them insights and material they can work with. It's a very powerful story.
No, it really is. It really is. And what comes to mind as we're talking about this is, I don't know, I'm sure you remember, but I remember when Elizabeth Smart was at the World Seed Summit, and she was talking about, what her mom had said to her after she had that, being kidnapped and abused, and, kind of what her mom said to her, one of the first, times that she was rescued and was brought back home, is, what these people stole, I can't remember how many, it was 8 or 9 months of your life. Mm-hmm. And, don't let them steal another minute.
Don't let them win.
Don't let them win, and that can happen to us, where we do feel victimized, or we get into that mindset where, because certain things happen to us, we feel that we're now, this or that, or we've lost some power. But I thought that was really powerful how she said that, what wise words that she was able to get from her mom, that, they've stolen this much of your life. Don't let them steal a minute more.
And all of this is being proactive.
Yeah.
Wow. Still, the habit that we talk about.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, because nobody can do it for you, right? Nobody else can do this in your place. Everybody has to be self-aware enough to realize that they have the power to do this. And once you're self-aware, like you talked about, that guy going out in the hall and crying, once he was aware, then, up until that point, he wasn't. But it's so important to get to that point where we are aware, and that we realize that point between, we talk about stimulus and response, is where all the freedom and future and growth can happen.
And basically the first 3 habits are about you, are about what you can do, and the 4th, 5th, and 6th are about your surroundings.
You go internally first.
Yes.
You got to start here, and then you can go out there. It's almost like they say, on the airplane, you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Yeah. And then after that, you can put it on your kids if there is an emergency, because it's really hard to help others when we're, trying to help ourselves. You can't lift somebody up when you're stuck in the hole too. And so just critical principles. And I love, once again, there's so many different aspects as he kind of breaks this down. As you talk about the inner circles and outer circles of where our concern is and where our focus is, and what type of feelings that creates when we feel like we have control and when we feel like we don't have control. And where we focus really can kind of determine, our path towards, becoming better, and our path towards just progression. And so, as far as kind of that example that you share with that man going out in the hall, is there anything else that comes to mind? Have you had any other experiences in kind of teaching either some of these principles or others? I'm sure you have.
Yeah. Well, I had some discussions and some almost fights in the classroom. People would say, well, you're not of this world. How can you say that something like that is my fault? It happened to me. How can you say that I'm responsible? Okay, who is? Tell me who is. Maybe it's not your fault that it happened to you. That's not what I want to say. There are bad things that happen. We all know that. But still, I think the difference between successful people and not unsuccessful people isn't that hard to understand. Successful people react differently to the same situations. And that's what makes the result different. Because the same, let me put this in a nice, correct way. The same bad things happen to successful people, but they respond in a different way. So sometimes people don't get that insight, and they get mad at me. They get angry at me for saying that it's their fault. And that's sometimes that's tough, because you have to really believe in it. And I do internalize it. I do believe in it. So if you are very convinced about it, then you touch them with more than words, and they feel that it's true what you're saying.
Yeah.
So that also happens.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, how do you have the audacity to say that it's my issue?
Yeah.
Or something like that. But I heard a quote once that I love, and where we talk about even hatred and having feelings of hate. Even that's why even in business, I think the more successful you get, you're just gonna get haters. And more than getting mad, I really do feel sorry for people. If they're negative, or if they want to say something negative or try to tear somebody down. If you notice, I really don't try to get into the fights or get in the mud and roll around, because it's just such wasted energy. But I heard a quote one time that I love, and that is, having hatred and anger towards somebody is like drinking poison and expecting it to hurt them.
Yes, yeah.
You're the one drinking the poison,
yeah,
because you can't let that go, and you can't let that stops your progression. And so it's like you drinking poison, and you're expecting it to hurt them. It doesn't affect them. Your hatred or your feeling that you could have towards somebody else because of something that happened isn't really affecting their life. It's affecting yours.
Don't give them that power.
Exactly right.
Because you give the power of how you feel and how you live your life, you give it to somebody else. How stupid is that if you hear it like this? Why would you do that? You don't have to. And sometimes when people treat me badly, I say, well, yeah, you have to deal with yourself your whole life. I only have to deal with you for 5 minutes, and then I'm done.
Exactly. I only have to deal with you. I love that. No, that's true. That's true. And that's one of the reasons, like I said, I kind of feel sorry. I really do feel sorry, because, sometimes I feel like, and not to get off topic, but, what kind of mindset does somebody have to be in to have that kind of anger constantly in their heart? Yeah. What kind of relationship? I really do feel bad, because
you get angry with me when I talk about this, because they say it's not their fault, but this has nothing to do with whose fault it is. It is what you do with the experience. That's what it's about. Everybody loses people, and that's a terrible thing to happen. But still, life goes on. You have also, in that situation, make a decision. But I'm going to sit here and feel sorry for myself the rest of my life, or do I grieve and move on? It's also a choice that you make, no matter what happens. Yeah, and sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow for people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, it really is. And I think that, once again, as we try to build on each of these principles and each of these habits, if we can take some time and even kind of self-reflect and even maybe look at our lives and say, you know, what are those things that we feel are holding us back, and are they really holding us back, or are we? You know, what are some of those things that are in that larger circle of concern that we're spending our time and energy on, that is wasted, that we should be spending our time on that smaller circle of concern where we can have that proactivity and make a change.
And then that circle gets bigger.
It does. And I think the opposite happens, right? The opposite happens if you focus on the bigger circle. Focus on the bigger circle and focus on all the things that you don't have control over. That circle, that smaller circle, is going to continually get smaller because you're slowly losing control.
Yes, yes, and that's totally correct. So it's an easy distinction to make. You can ask yourself a question: if this bothers me, it influences me, can I actively change it or not? And if you cannot, you either accept it. Yeah, no, that's the only choice. You accept it. But sometimes I talk with people in companies and they talk about how bad the company is. And then I say, okay, you're treated badly by your boss. Okay, then you have two choices: accept it and don't complain about it, or make another decision. Go away. Go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But do something.
Do something.
Change.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's such bad energy.
No, it really is. And sometimes what I realize too is, you know, the older I get, the more experiences you see and have yourself and that you see around you and your family and in business and stuff. A lot of times it really wasn't the upline. A lot of times it really wasn't the company, and it really wasn't necessarily the spouse, or it really wasn't all these things, because there's going to be issues no matter what company or what, you know, upline or this, or it's really dealing and changing this. It's changing us. And then once we change us, you know, all of those things around us can change too, because of the fact that we're surrounding ourselves with that kind of positive. We're being a solution rather than you know, focusing on just creating the problem bigger, because that's where our energy's going.
That's why it's called personal leadership, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We don't call, hey, somebody else is we all have to personally lead. So, you know, Mario, is if you were to give some words of advice for people that are listening, you know, that are starting to read this book, are going to catch up. And I know we're going to talk about some different principles next week. I want to kind of go through this month, kind of get us all focused on this book, because I know how powerful it is. What kind of words of advice, or is there anything that you would recommend people to do to create some more self-awareness, and to make sure that they can take some of these principles that we've kind of discussed today and implement them a little bit better in their life?
First of all, you really have to read the book. And if you're not a reader, go to YouTube, and I found 7 videos in which Stephen Covey himself explains the 7 habits. I've been to one of his seminars where he talks about the 5th habit. It is a 2-day seminar.
Yeah.
Well, there's so much to say about every habit.
Uh-huh.
It's not a book to read. It's something to use. It's a workbook, and he has also like assignments. And I always say, well, don't just read a book, because nothing will change. If there's an assignment, do the assignment and see what happens. Because also with the 2nd habit, begin with the end in mind, you have to examine yourself. You have to really dive inside, dig deep for who am I? What are my core values? What do I believe in? And what do I want my reputation to be? What do I want people to say when I'm not around anymore? How do I want people to see me? Because a reputation, you can build it, but it's easily gone. You have to be loyal to your values and your principles. And that's what you will learn by reading a book like this and take it really seriously. There are a lot of books in my cabinet here, but I only need this. This is such a strong, powerful book, because it helps you also to not act only on your feelings, but on decisions that you make based on your belief. Who are you, and what do I want to accomplish, and what do I want my reputation to be? If you think that's important to you, please read this book, chapter by chapter, habit by habit, and you'll get a lot of insight and a lot of tips. But there's such a cliche, Byron.
Hmm.
If you only read and you don't do something, nothing changes. It's
Yeah.
not about what you know, it's about what you do
Yeah.
with what you know.
Exactly.
That's the best tip I can give.
Yeah. No,
And maybe
and that's an
even
amazing
write
tip.
your own mission statement. Write your own mission statement. Who am I? What do I believe? What do I want to achieve? So that will help you make the right decisions. And that's why we are at Rain,
Hmm.
because there's a lot of companies that you can pick from. But there's a reason that we chose for Rain 4 years ago, and it has to do with our core values. It has to do with what we believe and what we stand for. Maybe otherwise, without him, we would have been to several other companies already.
Hmm.
But it gives you such a strong foundation, and it really is supportive also. It
No,
helps you go through the food.
no, and it's needed. It's needed because life isn't always easy. It's not like you're talking about. It's not like this is easy at all. And when you have those core beliefs and those values, and you know who you are, and you have your own mission statement, and then once again, you don't have to try to make a decision again and again and again. You've made it. You know who you are. And once you've made that decision preemptively, even when I tell my kids, if you know who you want to be and you know what you're going to do and what who you are, who you want to be, and what's acceptable and not acceptable, when you get put in situations that aren't acceptable, you don't need to evaluate if that is something that you should do or not, because you've already made that decision well before you got into that situation.
It's very simple when we talk about our business with Rain. If I would have to every time make it the new decision, do I go to this event? Do I go to this event? It's too much work.
Yeah.
Just decide once, I will be at every event. It's so much easier.
Yeah, no,
I love when you said it a while ago. You said you can pretend to care, but you cannot pretend to show up, and that's so strong. And that's what you have to do. So make a decision, and that makes. Well, that's what I learned from Tony Robbins. He said the word decision springs from a word in Latin, and it means to cut off. To cut off from any other possibility. So then it's easy.
Yeah.
You know what you want and where you're going. So a decision is really powerful.
No, they really are. And I love, as this book is titled, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Highly effective people. And you look at some of the most highly effective people, and they've done this some of them to an extreme. You even look at Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, who was one of the, founders and owner of Apple. He made a decision that he was going to wear Levi's and a black turtleneck every day, so he didn't have to choose what to wear. His core values and who he was got even that precise that you go open his closet, you go open it as they talk about, and he just had a ton of black turtleneck shirts. Because he didn't want to have to decide, what am I wearing today? He knew exactly who he was, even down to what he was putting on.
I think Apple did the same thing. Maybe you got it from him. I don't know. It takes time.
No. I appreciate you getting on today. I know we could keep going. We could keep going into all these other habits. But what I want to do, and I want to challenge you basically on what Mario talked about. This isn't a book. It's a workbook. This needs to be a workbook. This needs to be a learning process. And that's one of the reasons why I'm rereading it again. I've read it multiple times. I have it on Audible. I listen to it because you're always at a different place. You always need reminders. And these are things that we can internalize. And so I want to give everybody a chance to once again, if you have comments, share with them what you've learned or what you got out of what you've read so far. If you haven't, okay, then start reading it. Get caught up. We're going to talk about some more habits next week. But I appreciate every single one of you for having that desire to be more and become more and making that decision. Like Mario said, that's one of the reasons he's here with Miriam at Rain. That's one of the reasons I'm here. I made a decision. I didn't know the craziness or the ups or downs, but the decision was made. The commitment of who I am and what I want to become and what I believe we can do has never changed. And so it's just so important to have that foundation to be able to build upon in your life. So Mario, thanks so much for your feedback. I appreciate your experiences and your wisdom and being able to share it with us on what you've done with personal development and knowing this book and knowing other things. And I appreciate you as a leader being here as well. You and Miriam are just great people to be around. It's not just that I love doing business with you. You're just great people to know and to be friends with. So thanks for getting on, and thanks for all that you do. And I appreciate you sharing some of your wisdom tonight with everybody.
My privilege. I was honored.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. Let's go out and have an amazing week. Oh, we do want to plug. You've got your event. We got an event coming up in the Netherlands, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
This is coming up. Let me make sure. And we've got Russ Cowley that's going to be coming over there. We've got leaders like yourself and others that are going to be participating. And this is coming up this month. It's on the, let me see, I've got the date right here. The 15th. Yeah. I was looking down at my notes. Or 16th. Okay. So 16th. So we're going to have Russ over there. It's going to be a great weekend. And once again, it doesn't matter if you went to the last event. It doesn't matter if you were just at the Ascend in Budapest. It's not about that. It's about continually growing and attending and becoming more. And when we internalize these things, all the other things that we learn, whether it's systems of duplication, whether it's other principles and habits, we are going to get so much more out of them as we become and enlarge our capacity to be able to grow with, principle upon principle, step upon step, and continue to get better, which is what we're all about here in this industry and in RAIN. So thanks again, Mario. Appreciate it. Thanks everybody else for tuning in. Wish you all the success. I will be at the ribbon cutting tomorrow. You'll probably see me on Facebook here in a minute later, kind of promoting that. We got people coming into town already that are going to be here for the ribbon cutting and the training that we're doing this weekend. So we're excited about the office launch and office opening. A lot of great things going on in RAIN. And we love, once again, where RAIN is going and what we're able to accomplish together and what we're going to be able to do in the future. So have a great evening, afternoon, night, morning, wherever you're at in the world. And we'll see you. Take care, everybody. Thanks again, Mario. See you.
Bye-bye.